Hello everybody, welcome back to Malta 5. My name's JD. Today we are back punting in Pioneer with Mono Blue Wizards. And so there's been a couple flavors of Mono Blue recently I've seen. There's kind of like the more aggro, low to the ground, Curious Obsession build. And then there's more like the Nykthos Devotion, actual devotion focused one with ley lines. I decided to take a slightly spicier take on this and kind of combine two different decks, or I guess add a sub theme to the Mono Blue Devotion package. That being wizards. So it just so happens that a lot of the good Mono Blue cards are wizards anyway. Merfolk Trickster, Harbinger of the Tides. They get the double blue pips in their mana cost, so great for the devotion style. They happen to be wizards. Even Master of Waves, our big payoff card, is a wizard. Siren Storm Tamer is a wizard. So it was kind of already there. I just went a little bit heavier on it. Obviously, Gadwick's a wizard. So as you can see, plenty of wizards. So yeah, like I said, I decided to just capitalize on that just a little bit more. And so what I mean by that is probably the odd card here that you don't see in many is Naban, Dean of Iteration. So he's a 2-mana, 2/1, legendary creature, human wizard. So I only have 3 of them because he's legendary. He says, if a wizard entering the battlefield under your control causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So he's doubling up all our enter the battlefield triggers caused by wizards. Most of the deck happens to be wizards, and a lot of the deck happens to have enter the battlefield triggers. Let's run through the rest. So we have Harbinger of the Tides. It's a wizard. When it enters the battlefield, you can bounce a tapped creature back to an opponent's hand. So if Naban on the field, Harbinger can now bounce 2 tapped creatures, which is pretty cool. Trickster, absolutely super versatile creature. When he enters the battlefield, you tap a target creature an opponent controls, and it loses all abilities. So now you can double up, tap down 2 things, all kinds of tricksy little things you can do with the Trickster. The bond doubles that up. What else we got? Oh, Master Waves. Doubling up this trigger is amazing. Twice the amount of elemental tokens. So say you have Naban down, you have Master Waves come down. Even just those 2, normally you'd get 2 tokens. You now get 4 tokens. Let's say you also have, a Merfolk Trickster. That's 2 more pips of devotion. So normally that would be 4 tokens. Now we're doubling that to 8 tokens. So that can get out of hand pretty quickly. Gadwick, when he enters the battlefield, draws you X cards. So now this triggers an additional time. You're drawing twice as many cards. So as you can see, Naban really gets out of hand, doubling up the value of these enter the battlefield triggers from our wizards. We'll briefly run through kind of the rest of things here. Siren Storm Tamer is a good 1-drop. It's a wizard. You can sack it to counter a spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. Pretty solid ability. So use this to protect, drop this turn 1, maybe swing in, get a couple points of damage, and then you can use it to sack and protect your bigger threats in the later turns. Benthic Biomancer, I just wanted another 1-drop, and this is kind of the best 1-drop blue wizard available to us, in my opinion. It's just a 1/1 for 1, but you can adapt it. It becomes a 2/2, so it can be a little bit more of a threat, and it loots when it adapts. You draw a card, then discard. So if you have a second copy of a legendary card that you can't really cast, or an extra land you don't need, you can draw and then get rid of that old card. So a little bit of card selection, a little bit of value there. And we talked about Naban, we've talked about Harbinger, Merfolk Trickster, Thassa, God of the Sea. In this style of deck, she'll get turned on pretty often. Because, we just have a lot of devotion. So a 5/5 indestructible is a pretty solid threat. the beginning of your upkeep, you scry 1. That is more valuable than it sounds. Being able to scry 1 before your draw step every turn really helps you, avoid flooding out, avoid getting mana screwed, that sort of thing. More helpful than it sounds. And then you can pump mana into her to make creatures unblockable. Maybe this was more valuable with the Curious Obsession in the deck because you could guarantee that creature gets through and you draw a card. But it is a good way to finish off the opponent, just make some stuff into unblockable, swing through for damage. Wizard's Retort is a no-brainer in a wizard deck. It's basically just counterspell. 2 mana, counter target spell. Boom. Simple, easy as that. Very rarely will it cost 3 mana, and even still, not the worst thing in the world if it does. Tempest Djinn is not a wizard, but it's just so good. It adds so much devotion. It's at minimum, probably a 3/4 for 4, and it only grows from there. So it's got a fat butt. It avoids a lot of red removal. It flies, so it's a good beater in the air. It can become very big, 6, 7 power. Tempest Djinn is just too good not to include. Gadwick we talked about. And then finally a new one from Theros Beyond Death is the new version of Thassa. Because we have a lot of enter the battlefield triggers, this Thassa was pretty interesting to me. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield. So basically at your end step, you get to flicker one of your creatures. She can also tap down she can tap things down as well. But with all the enter the battlefield triggers, being able to flicker creatures becomes pretty valuable. So it doesn't work with Gadwick because X will be 0, but the Harbinger of the Tides, the Trickster, that sort of thing, flickering those 2, you get extra value out of it there. Even Master Waves, I think the way the rules work, technically the elementals will not die. If you flicker the Master, he comes back, enters the battlefield. The old elementals stay there. He makes a bunch more. So, but she is a 4-drop. She is legendary. I only threw in 1 just for a little bit of extra value. And that kind of covers it. 22 lands. Our curve tops out at 4-ish. Gadwick will usually be a 4 or a 5-drop. So nothing too crazy. But we do want to make sure we hit all our blue sources to cast a Tempest Djinn on turn 3, because that's super important. You want to land this guy turn 3. You want to have double blue available. So we couldn't go too heavy on Nykthos. Wanted to have 20 blue sources. We have a single Castle Vantress in here for value. If we are flooding out and we have one of these on the battlefield, gives us something to do with our mana. We can scry. It's gonna come into the battlefield untapped 98% of the time. That's not an exact figure. I don't know the math, but we're running 19 islands, so should not be a problem. Anyway, let's talk about the sideboard real quick. We've got Grafdigger's Cage shuts down Collected Company, shuts down certain graveyard strategies, not all. Spell Pierce, an additional counterspell for non-creature spells, important to note. So not super effective against the Inverter deck, unfortunately. This maybe should just be another Mystical Dispute, but we'll see. Damping Sphere against the Lotus Field deck. Sorcerer's Spyglass shuts down annoying planeswalkers, other activated abilities. Sorry, my mismatched double version. Tidebinder Mage against red and green creature-based decks. This guy is super good, also happens to be a wizard. Mystical Dispute. This can counter either the Jace or the Thassa's Oracle in the Inverter deck. This is just an amazing card against anything that runs blue. 1 mana leak is pretty solid. So maybe I should have more of those. Covetous Urge is an interesting one. You get to look at their hand, and then you choose a non-land card from the graveyard or hand. So you get the option. You look at the hand first, then you choose graveyard or hand, and you basically steal it. You can cast that card, spend mana of any color. So this is an interesting way. You can steal pieces from the inverter combo deck. You can whatever. Any deck with like a big payoff, you can kind of pick that out of their hand. It's like a expensive Thoughtseize almost, and then you can cast it. So it's got a little bit of an upside, but it does cost 4 mana. So that's we'll see how that does. It's an interesting inclusion. But anyway, there's my mono blue deck. Focusing on the wizards. Mono blue featuring Naban, basically. So we're gonna run this through a league, see how we do. Thank you guys for watching. Please hit subscribe if you haven't yet. It really actually does help us. So we'd appreciate it. And I'll see you in the first round.